back to my channel. I'm Tony, and if you follow me, you know I just love building these huge RC kits. And this particular build series, it is the HPI Baja, the 5B. It's the self-build kit version that HPI released some time ago now. I think 2022, something like that. I recently got this courtesy and a lot of help from Wheelspin Models up there in Cannock, and my two sons from NXT Collectables. So massive shout out to you guys, and thank you for making this possible. I have to say that building this kit is a real privilege and a real pleasure. Everything you put together works so well. So, you know, everything that everything, the plastic parts, the metal parts, everything just fits together perfectly. So, you know, huge respect to the design team and the engineering team from HPI, and a big shout out to Robin from HPI, who is now following me, and I'm really chuffed and privileged to that. So thank you, Robin. And also a massive thank you to the guys that are building one of these or have built one, for all your helpful comments as well, because this is new to me, so I'm learning all the way. So you guys know who you are, and I appreciate all your comments, and I've interacted with you separately. And in the last build session, I finished off the receiver box, well, the kill switch installation, tidied up the receiver box, we installed the brakes, and then we tested the kill switch, fired the engine up, and demonstrated how that all works, and it worked perfectly. So far so good. Everything that I'm doing seems to be working exactly as I anticipated. And so in this session, it's going to be about putting the main spur gear together, assembling all this, installing it onto the Baja, and then I'm going to go on and do the throttle linkage. And I think that will probably about be enough for this build session. So we're at stage 83 of the build, on the gas build rather than the electric build. So 83 of the gas build, and I'm just going to try and get that achieved today, and I'll be happy if we can get that done and finished today, and then we'll move on to, I think the next step will be the shock absorbers. So I'm looking forward to that, but a little bit apprehensive as well. But just before I reset the camera, a massive thanks to all of you. The support I get on my channel is mind-blowing, and I really do appreciate it. And without you, this channel will not survive. So please keep supporting me. Please keep giving those amazing thumbs up. Please keep your subscriptions going. And in most of all, please keep those comments. I love interacting with you guys. So I welcome all comments, good and bad. And so just finally, thank you. Massive thank you. Anyway, let's get on. I'll reset the camera and we'll get cracking. So ahead of the installation of the main spur gear, this thing here, this needs a bit of work as well. I think there's some little rubber or neoprene shocks that need to go install this. We'll have a look at that in a moment. It asks us to install this metal plate onto the main brake housing here and around the clutch belt. So that sort of kind of goes in that position there. But ahead of that, there's a couple of little rubber plugs, tiny little rubber plugs. Let me bring this into camera. Here we go. One, I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but it's kind of like it's got a flat side to it. So I'm going to push this in like that. Just going to rotate it round so that, let me get this in the right orientation for you. Just making sure that that flat edge, hang on, there we go, that flat edge is in line with this flat edge. And there's another one that goes in here. Doesn't tell me which way round it's got to go. Let's just pop it in and see how we get on. I'm just tempted to turn that round. Now this should just push into place. It's got a way to go, I think. I don't want to get the mallet on it. I think as we drive the fixings in, this should pull this plate in further. So let's start. There's a few fixings in this. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of these countersunk bolt fixings. No need for thread lock on this because it's going into plastic. Last thing you want to do is put thread locker on fixings that go into plastic. So I'm just going to wind these in ever so slightly, just until they start biting. That's just starting to bite now. Yeah, if you put thread locker on, use it with plastic, eventually over time the thread locker will break the plastic down, so you don't want to do that. So that's going in slowly, just going to slowly wind that in, hoping that the action of winding these bolts in pulls this plate in, you know, to the point where I feel that it needs to go. Just making sure I've got 2 more bolts the same size, and I do. That's going to go in there, is it? Yeah, look at that. Just everything seems, so far, everything seems to fit as intended. Just going to wind it in a bit. Last one. I've got to wind all these in, tighten them all up. Oops, no, wrong size. Excuse me. Oh, wrong size bolt again. Let me go and find the right bolt. Okay, got the right bolt this time. I guess it's because I've got 2 bags open. Anyway, that's no harm done. Just going to slowly wind these in. Tempting to get the old little power screwdriver on this, but I think I'd rather do this by hand. Don't want to over egg it. It's starting to feel right now. Seems to be pulling it into where it should be. Let's go down and wind that one in. That seems to be tight as it can be. So I don't know if you know, but I'm back building my Series 1 Land Rover as well, and thoroughly enjoying that. I'm going to try and do as much as I can on both of these, and try and release videos frequently, because I know some of you watching this are probably more into the Armortech build, but hopefully you're enjoying this build as equally as I am. Hopefully I'm sort of showing you that anybody can build one of these. So that's that. That actually feels exactly how it should do. Lovely. So that's on. I'm just checking that it's aligned. No real gaps. No gaps. Perfect. So that's on. Now, the only other thing to do is there's a little sliding bracket or housing piece that goes on there, and it's actually got on the back of that, okay, you can see little recesses for these 2 little nuts here. I mean, look how well thought out is that. Just brilliantly thought. Everything is thought out so well. So that just slides into position on that, and that completes stage 84, 83 and 84. Actually 83 was the brakes, 84 is this. So that completes that. Now we're ready to start looking at this part. Right, so now let's look at this spur gear. So this is in 2 parts. Just need to push that out. So that's out. So there's 2 parts to this, and then you have these little rubber or neoprene. Let's move that so you can see these little neoprene or rubber. So I can just imagine they're like a shock absorber almost. I can imagine that they have a function so that if, I guess, to stop this smaller gear stripping, maybe. There's a lot of movement in these. It's quite a lot of movement in this. So I was talking to my son Ben, and he used to have one of these, the original one, and he was saying that these are, I think he's pretty sure these are designed to take any shock out of like a crash or anything like that, to prevent these the gears from stripping, the metal gear stripping the plastic gear. So everything that I'm sure that HPI do is born out of experience and intentional. So these, from what I can see, there's a slight scallop. I don't know if you can see that in the. Let me move this into there. There's a little scallop there, and that matches the pattern around the curvature of the central disc like that, and they literally just push into place, nice and easy. They don't ask us to put anything in here, no oil or anything. They just literally push in. And I've seen on the HPI website that these actually are available as spares as well. So obviously over time they must wear out and become loose. And then this simply, I don't think there's any orientation issues. I think this just simply just line those holes up. I wonder if it would have been easier to put them in. Oh, there you go. And then just push that into place. And that's it. How simple is that? And then I guess that, I mean, I can't do it by hand, but I guess that those neoprene or rubber shock absorbers allow this to move ever so slightly to take the shock out of an impact or crash. So I think Ben's got it spot on there. I think he's absolutely right. I think that's exactly what it's supposed to do. So now this needs to be put onto the main Baja. Right, so we've now got the main spur gear itself. They ask you to put a spacer on, which is this little metal spacer, and that just slides onto there. Nice and easy. And then this, you can see it's got a slotted rather than a circular sort of passage, and it's obviously the bar itself is slotted, so this can only go on one way. Just trying to sort of push the, whoops. There you go, classic. All right, let's pop that back into, let's just pop that back into place there. I don't think I'm going to have to hold that when I push this in. All right, come on. There we go. Just that's pushed into place. Just rotating that round. I don't know if you can see that it's actually rotating the rear wheels as it should. And then there's a big E-clip that goes on that. Just got to pick it up. And that just, hopefully this is going to be not too painful. I don't want these springing around, so I'm going to, don't want this bouncing off, going into the abyss of my garage somewhere. Come on. Here we go. It's the camera curse. This is the camera curse. Let's see if I can get this on without... Hey, it's on. Boom. That's that. Right, so the last part of this particular stage is this sort of main drive gear here, which if you look on the back of this, there is a slot in the back of this, and there's obviously a recepting sort of slot here or a raised area here. So that's designed to lock into place. So all we've got to do is try and just make sure we mesh this gear to the main spur gear. Push that into place. Is it going to go in? Here it is. It's in, and that's it. So as the engine rotates, it so returns or rotates the spur gear, and in turn drives the back wheel, and that's how it all works. Incredible. Now this is secured with a bolt, a spring washer, and it does ask you to put some thread locker on this, rightly so, because it's metal into metal, and you really don't want this coming undone, because again this is going to take a huge amount of abuse, intended abuse I should say. It's designed to be robust, obviously, but as you work with your model and drive it, so I need to just hold that gear while I tighten that bolt up. And that's it. Right, so this is all covered up with this cover plate here, and this is only secured by a couple of these plastic retainers here, just need to be pushed through, And then we've got a couple of metal clips, these sort of spring clips, retaining spring clips that should hold it into place. So I think that that just passes through like that. I'm gonna hopefully slide the top one in, shouldn't be too much of a problem. Huh? That's all right. Come on. That's it, that one's in. Just need to do the bottom one now. That might have to be turned on its side for me to do that.
You might want to flip it over.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, mate. Yeah. So, oh.
I can hold something. When we hold something.
It's a little bit awkward. Oh, I've got it. Hang on, let me just move that camera. There you go.
I've got a clip and I'm holding this.
You're holding that? Okay.
Because
Okay, right.
I don't want this to fall someone else.
Yeah, if it falls, it's going to fall on you, mate. And then we're going to be in trouble, aren't we?
And then...
We don't want that.
And then I'm going to...
There we go. That's it. Or we don't. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Don't worry. Right, that's it.
I've got the petrol.
You leave that. That's it. You got it. Well done. Thank you. Right, so that's that. So that's in. Yeah.
What do we do now?
Now we've got to do some really complicated stuff. We've got to do the throttle linkage. So that's that bit done. Really, really pleased with that. And couldn't be more pleased, really. So that's that. Now I'm going to go on.
That just went...
It went round, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're going to go. I'm going to get all the bags and bits and pieces. It went round again. Yeah. Well, that's when the engine starts. That's going to fly around really, really quickly. So we've got to go and get the other bag of bits and bobs, and we'll start with the throttle linkage. Right. For this part, we're going to need kit bag K. There. We've also got the bag here, which is fairly obvious what it is. It's the throttle linkage bag. There's no label on it, but it's pretty obvious what it is. And there's some parts I've just retrieved from the parts tree, and a silicone tube here which we need to cut a piece off. So what we'll do is I'm going to open up these bags, open them up and see what we have got. I don't think we're going to need all of the parts in this bag for this stage. That's obviously pretty sure. That looks like the roof section. It's all part of the roof section, so that can go away for now. Don't need that. And then we have a whole bag of clips and screws and fittings. And then I would think these big clips, possibly for the body, maybe. So don't need those just yet. I'm going to pop those in my little parts box, and I'm going to open up the throttle linkage bag itself. And we've got the main rod. So I've got that on there. Just pop these out. Can't lose any of these parts. Got a couple of sleeves. Couple of springs. Another part of the linkage. And this, which I believe will be part of the braking part. So that's that. And now I just need to work out what goes where, what fixings I need, and we'll get cracking. Okay, so just about ready to start the throttle linkage. And I may be overcomplicating it, but I think it's quite complex and something we have to be extremely careful with. They're very clear in the instructions with setting out dimensions and what have you. I won't bore you with that, I'll just talk you through that. But effectively everything that needs to go on this rod here needs to be threaded in from this end here, because obviously you've got this bent section here which is what connects to the main servo, the throttle servo. and you're not going to get all of the things around that, so you have to thread everything in from one end. So that's the plan, and also they give you pretty critical dimensions to work with. So for instance, there's a sleeve that goes on here, and that's set out at 90 millimeters from the end of this to the inside edge of the sleeve. Now this cutting pad I've got here is a metric cutting pad, and each one of these squares represents 10 millimeters. So I know that as long as I've got that lined up on the end there, and I've got this in parallel to the main one of the cutting lines, if I go 9 squares in to this point here, that's 90 millimeters. So let's put the first one on. So this is a beautiful little aluminium sleeve with a little grub screw, or facility for a grub screw. Let's put this on first. Just thread that through. And what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to put some thread locker on this little grub screw. Don't want this working itself loose. Not a huge amount. And what I'm going to do initially is just get it so I can get it started. Get that thread locker out of the way. Now, lining this up. So I've got it on the thick line. What have we done here? There we go, there. On the thick line, parallel to the cutting line. Move that back to there. That's 90 millimeters. So I'm now going to tighten that up. Hang on. Do it the other way round. Sorry. Well, let's keep that in there. Push this down to 90. And just slowly tighten that off. Keeping an eye on that. Just don't want it creeping. Sorry, just being very quiet because I'm concentrating. Get that nice and tight. That's the first one in at 90 millimeters. So I don't know if you can see that pencil mark there. That's my 90 millimeters to the back edge of this little sleeve. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to put a piece of this little rubber hose, and they ask for 10 millimeters. So at the moment this is actually cut, it's not square, so I'm going to use my cutting board just to trim that square. Now I've got that square, I can just measure using my cutting board again. It says 10 millimeters. So that's that. Then that threads on from that end again. That goes up against that. Then we have this piece here, which is a piece that I found on my parts tree, and that slides on the bottom one. There's only one hole that passes all the way through, so that goes on there like so. I mean, we've got to work out some alignments, but I just want to get the measurements correct to start with. And then we need to think about the brake mechanism, which is this bit here. So I've got to just move that out of the way. Yeah, so let's do the brake mechanism next. Actually, before we do the brake setup, let's put the other part of this on here. So the next thing we need to do is the thinner gauge spring. Slides over the rod. Then we have another one of these sleeves. I've already loaded the grub screw in, and that has to be set at 74 millimeters So from the back edge of this sleeve to to this edge of this sleeve needs to be 74 millimeters. So I've already got my gauge set up for 74 millimeters. What I'll do now is I'm going to use my gauge and then inside the jaws of the gauge, just because it's under a little bit of tension with the spring, and I'm going to find, there it is, my hex tool, and we're going to tighten that off. That's on there. So now that's set exactly at 74 millimeters. You can see that. And I'm just using, instead of using the blades of the gauge, I'm using the actual jaws of the gauge, so that sort of easily traps that in there. So that gives me confidence that that's now set at the right dimension. And now the next thing we need to do is look at the braking mechanism as well. And there's a couple of, there's a tool, there's a piece here that we need to use. And there's also a critical dimension for that as well. So let me just reset the gauge and I'll be straight back. Right, so before we do the brakes, we're going to do, this is the accelerator part, sorry. So what I've got to do is we need to set this at a set dimension of 50 millimeters from the inside edge of this part here, 50 millimeters. Now this part here, if I've got this correct, slides through, no, sorry, it goes through this back bit, goes through here, and then this will eventually go past through to the throttle here and then lock off with this. But we're not interested in that at the moment. What we're interested in doing is getting this threaded into this part here, so it ends up with 50 millimeters. So I'm going to do that now before we do the end of the brake end. So this just threads in. I'm just going to turn this. It's obviously a little bit awkward. Now again, I'm going to use my board here, and we can see if I'm using this thick line here as let me move this out of the way. We're using this thick line here as the starter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This thick line here, that needs to move down to that point there. I'll try and spin this without bending the main shaft. It's definitely going in. Let's just measure that. Sorry, let's do that. Got a way to go. Just going to try and just keep turning that. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's getting there slowly. So I'm quiet, I'm just sort of concentrating, sorry. Again, we're just going to use that as a gauge. You can see it's getting close. Is it asking for the centre line of it? Actually, so I think a couple of more turns. And we're about the right position. Let's have a look. I think that's spot on. I think that's spot on. So why don't we just use my gauge. Head that down to 50. Ooh. 50.03 is close enough. Inside edge of that to the center of that, I'd say that's pretty spot on. Yeah, happy with that. Now that at some point will have to be turned back that way, I think, and that I won't snap that into position yet, but I think that this slots into the accelerator, the hole in the accelerator, or the throttle, and then this snaps into place to lock it into place. So I think that's that. I think I'm pretty sure I've got that sort of there or thereabouts. I might have to turn this a little bit, you know, whatever. But anyway, that's roughly what we're looking at. Now the next part will be the brake, and this is this rod here, which will eventually go into the sort of the brake assembly that we put on previously. That goes on there like that. Then this tiny little plastic conical piece, which I had to find on one of the parts trees, slides over that. Then there's a spring, and then they ask you to wind this on and then leave it 8 mils short of the thread. So I need to sort of wind this into, just wind this on. I'll grab that. Don't want to damage it, so use my nylon lined pliers. Just wind that on. So leave that 8 millimeters. So I'll just undo that, reduce that down to 8. I'll use the inside of the gauge. Oh. Okay, that'll do. That's good enough. That is good enough. Now we've got a way to go. Probably got about 6 millimeters to wind that in a bit more. Let's just start to spin. That's better. Couple of more millimeters to go. Try not to get that to spin. I'll use my good arm. Still getting over the broken arm. Now let's have a look. That is it. 8 millimeters exactly. Right, so that's that. That's pretty much the whole entire assembly of that. Quite how this works, not sure yet. I think that once that goes onto the brake, that will obviously lock that into position here. So I guess the only thing remaining now is to try and work out how to put this whole assembly onto the Baja. Right, so I've tried to position the camera to try and explain what I've got to do here. So got the whole throttle assembly, so that needs to be passed through there. Now the first thing I'm going to do is pass the brake rod through, hang on a minute, awkward, so pass it into this. I'm going to hold that, and got a grub screw. I'm going to load that up on my hex driver, and I'm just going to lock that. I think this needs to be flush. I think it does. I'll make sure that goes in square. I don't want it twisting, so I'm going to hold that and just get that. That just stops that from jiggling around. Then what I need to do is connect up this rod here into the main throttle itself. Hopefully you can see this. Let's just spin that around. So that just slots into that hole there. That's nice. And then this rod here ultimately connects to the, what's going on here? Right, so that's a little bit short. Oh, actually, I don't know, is it? Tell you what I need to do. I need to turn the, let's centralize the servo arm. Ah, perfect. So now let's see where this rod sits. So if we line it up with the second hole in, this one here, I can see that that will drop in and that will give us a perfect neutral position. So that's what we're going to need to do. Before I put the retainer on this, let's take this servo arm off and turn all this off. I'm doing everything you shouldn't do. I'm turning the handset off before I turn the model off, but this is just convenience. Let's take this off. Just now need to get this arm off somehow. Let's have a look. Just making sure I don't have any other thing connected on it. I don't. Like a grub screw or something like that. Don't want to damage this. But this has got to come off in order to get the, it's just coming up slowly. It's coming. Oops. Right, so that's off. Now I need to just link that arm into that. Boy, that is tough. That is tough. Is that going to go in there? Make sure I've got that around the right way. Yes, I do. So it needs to go in. Needs to go in this way. Right, that's interesting. Right, okay, I'm gonna have to get this off so I can put it on. Oh, actually, you're gonna go on. Wow, that could be interesting. Right, I need to have a look at that because for some reason I cannot get that to link into that as it should. That should spin round and be in that position there. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so I've drilled out the hole, this hole, my target hole here, a bit more than the size of it was, and now it goes over the rod, no problem. So I'm going to start all over again. So push this through here. I'm going to install the brake bar. I'm just going to put it in. Pretty flush. Just tighten that up so that I can, that's right, that stops it from going anywhere. Now I've got to try and get, just going to push this bar, so I know my hand's in the way. Difficult to do this while on camera. Every time, there we go. Right, so now that's, as you can see, that's now inside the throttle there. The rod is in the hole in the throttle. Let me just see if I can spin that around so you can see that in there. Now we've got, I just need to rotate that around so it's got the right orientation for the servo arm. I'm going to pop this servo arm on. Now I just need to position it onto its 90 degrees. Is that it? No. There we go. I don't want to push it down too hard. So that's it. I mean, I haven't put the retaining part on yet. So now I just need to check what we've got. Well, that's not right down the end. The curved bar is not straight, so that's going to bind with the main linkage arm. So just tighten that up. So in its neutral position, let's just put the power on. Okay, so that is it neutral. So the servo arm is in its neutral position. That's as far as that throttles. That's fine, that's in its neutral position. Brakes are, is there any space? A little bit tight on the brakes. So I might have to release this threaded rod at the back, but that's what it's all about. That's what it's designed for, so you can take the pressure off of that. So I'm happy with that, so I can just release that. And before I put this retainer on, let's just see how this works. So we'll see, this is a bit awkward because now let's put the accelerator on. That's it. So that's full accelerator. So we've got the servo arm throwing back, throttle, which then in turn throws the throttle back. Let's try the brakes. And there's the brake. I don't know if you can see that. That's now moving, so that's going to apply the brakes. Pretty happy with that. Now, there may be a bit of adjustment required, but pretty happy with that. There's a little bit of movement on here. I might have to tighten this up a bit because I'm not happy with that. Although it does say a millimetre of movement. It's probably a bit more than that, probably a couple of mil. And that might slacken that off. So I'll do that, and then we'll put the retainer on, and then we'll see how we get on. Right, so I've got the retainer on now. Sorry, I didn't film that. It's very straightforward. Just with a pair of pliers, just clip that on. I'm quite happy with everything. The only thing I need to do now is just slacken off the back brake, or the brake. So I'm just going to go in through the rear of the car and just unwind that just a tad with my screwdriver, just so we get, now that's better. That's now got a bit of play on it, as it should. The only other thing I'm going to do, because I'm worried about this sort of working itself loose, I'm just going to put a tiny little bit of thread locker on that, just a tiny bit, just to stop it from wanting to break loose. Just hold that back in position. It's pretty flush with the, want that to be square. Sorry, I'm being quiet because I'm just concentrating. That's nice and tight. Right, so I'm just going to do that one more time. Acceleration, brake, acceleration, brake. I can see that the rocker arm is moving on the brake. Actually, I can actually see that the brakes are moving in. So I'll show you that. Actually, I'll take it off the hilt and show you. So again, we just accelerate, so we can see now that as we accelerate, let's have a look, it's pushing the throttle arm, and on the brakes you should see these close in ever so slightly. Perfect. Right, I think that is it. I'm pretty happy with the setup. I might put a little bit of petrol in this and give it a whiz and see how we get on. Right, so I've primed the engine, primed the fuel, got some fuel in it. It's on, everything's good to go. Let's just see if I can get you to start. Of course not. Oh, come on. Whoa! See, the wheels are now rotating and the brakes are working. Watch the wheels spin and then put the brakes on, they stop. It's obviously still running in. Oh, I can't wait to get this running. Hang on. Don't snatch it. Don't snatch it, Tone. Just needs a bit of running in. I might, a bit of tuning. Oh, that's better. Raring to go. Oh. Kill the switch. Really pleased with that. Love that smell. Wow. Okay, a good day's work, I think. Right, I'll put this back on my bench and I'll come back to camera. Well, that's it for today's build session, and I'm really pleased how it's gone. And again, it probably doesn't seem like we've achieved a lot, but actually these small steps have a big impact in the progression of the build. And just to recap, we just did this sort of main gear drive, and we did the throttle linkage, and set all that up. And as you saw, I've got it working beautifully on the throttle and the brake now, so I'm really pleased. I think it's important to test it at that stage before you start going further. So the next stage for this is actually the roof, but I can't progress with the roof because, as I said, I'm waiting for an upgrade for the because of the bigger engine, for the roof shell that sort of gets over this bit here, because the current one doesn't fit with the spark plug as it currently stands. So I'm waiting for that to come in. But what I may do is go on and start building these shock absorbers, which is something, as I said previously, is something that I'm looking forward to doing. Never done anything like that before. But I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also a little bit apprehensive. So anyway, that's that. And then in the fullness of time, once we get that done, I think we're sort of really on the home straight. You know, wheels will go on. We'll do sort of a bit of a test run on it before I do the body shell, and yeah, I'm really buzzing about getting this thing operational. As you can see, when I started it, it still needs to be run in properly, and there'll be a running in sort of video, I guess, I'll do about that. But it's going to take, you know, a bit of time to get it running correctly, so when it starts and get a bit of tuning on it, I'll get Ben to help me with that, and then it should be running beautifully. So really, really, really pleased with that. So anyway, thank you for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, because we're not done with this yet. There's a bit of work to do. And then of course I'm going to be doing some painting on the body shell. I'm going to do a customized version as well. I will pay homage to the HPI color scheme, of course, but I'm also thinking about doing my own version of a, you know, sort of a Tony the Tanker scheme, like a camo type scheme, because you get 2 body shells. So I will be doing that. So we've got a few more build sessions in this before we're done. And I'll sign off by saying, again, thank you for all your amazing support, and thank you for joining me today. I'm Tony. I love building these models, and I'll see you in the next build session.